Craig here. What an awesome pass through the slot, onto the stick of Batherson. Kachuk in tight up, let's get got him and scores! Brady Kachuk wins it in overtime for Ottawa.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am joined here with a great group of guys. We're pushing probably the most important movement right now here in Ottawa, Alfie to the Hall. Craig, Stephen, Corey, how are you guys doing today? Thank you for joining.
Good, man. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks. Good, man.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks so much for having us.
Well, of course, obviously I've had Craig on the show a couple of times. I've gotten to chat with him a lot. I've been a big part of the Sens community, and obviously Craig is like one of the kings of the Sens community. So having him here as well with you guys is obviously always a pleasure. How is this group assembled? I was talking to Craig before this interview started, and I was sitting on my bed like at 9 o'clock in the morning about a week ago, and I get a follow from this account called Alfie to the Hall. I thought it was just another like fan making some, fun stuff, whatever, but it's been really professional and it's taken off, of course, with a great group of guys like yourself. So, how is the group assembled and what went into really starting that marketing campaign to push Alfie to the Hall?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brandon. And it's funny, the whole process actually started before COVID even hit. And Stephen and I were in someone's, it's your classic backyard conversation. The 2019 inductees had just been announced, and there was a spirited debate about who got in, who else could be in, and what we've come to recognize is there's very few seats every year for the players to take. There's 4 in the male category, and so when COVID hit, I really sat down when everyone was locked at home. After my kids went to bed, I would sort of pull out quant hockey and hockey reference, and I knew Alfie was good, but the more and more I sort of dug into it, the more sort of rich data we were able to find, and I eventually sort of sent like a really rough version of that to Stephen. And Stephen, I don't know if you want to pick it up from there, because that's where our team sort of started to grow, and we realized that we felt we had a really compelling case on our hands.
And Stephen, I just have to say too, absolutely love that jersey. I'm loving it right now.
Oh no, it's the only one and only time I've met Alfie was at Sweden night, and I got him to shook his hand, signed it, and I said something. I don't even know what I said, and mumbled something, and then got my picture and scurried away. Awesome. But yeah, Corey, the part that Corey left out is that Corey actually lives in Toronto now. And so it's a little, it's not just like backyard arguments. No, this is, in Orleans, these are debates with Leafs fans who, despise him. Yeah. And so when he sent it to me, he was like, we're all locked down at home. This is 2020. He's like, I kind of think this is a really rough draft, and here's just some ideas of him kicking the tires. I look at him like, this is really good. This is really, really good. And so we did go back and forth, and we refined it and beefed it up. And I challenged Corey on a lot of things that he had put down. But eventually got it to a point where like I'm in Ottawa, and it's like I don't have this huge network, but there's a couple people that I sort of know, acquainted with, just kind of enough to be like, hey, what do you think about this? Or enough that if I land in their inbox with something that it's not, they know who I am and know whatever. And so I said, hey, hey, what do you think of this? And I did this, cold called a few people and hit up a few people, and then eventually I did that to Cyril later, and he was like, right away, he's like, this is great stuff. Hey, let's chat. And I did it to Craig too, but it wasn't until Cyril got back to Craig that Craig was like, yeah, cool. Yeah. You guys are good.
How do you know Cyril anyways? I mean, when I heard that he was a part of the group, I mean, that puts some legitimacy to the group, right?
I had met him. I had met him in passing a few years ago, and I got to chat with him, and it was enough that, there was not like any strong connection, but enough that, when I sent him an email, it was okay. And I had this deck, this presentation that was, by that point, pretty well thought out and pretty polished.
What were the main points you put in that presentation?
Corey, do you want to start on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know what, and this was part of my own education process as well, is that, and it's in the name, it's the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And when I started sort of digging a little bit deeper, I really almost broke it into three different segments. The first one being Alfie's NHL career. And if you look at the awards he's won, the plateaus that he's hit, all of his accomplishments, there's probably enough there in that one bucket alone. To propel Alfie to the Hall.
Yeah.
I think if you then look into the second bucket, what I really do feel is sort of one of the criminally underrated components of Alfie's career, and that's his international career. And he's had 14 different international appearances. I think he's got 7 different medals. He's got a gold medal at the Olympics. And you know what? There was some stuff that we couldn't even get into the deck, but it's like, Alfie's the second highest point getter in Swedish history at the Olympics. Exactly. So
I mean,
Hall of Famer. And so, you know, when we look at that second bucket, and I would also put in that second bucket in terms of international, is Alfie's time with I'll probably butcher this name, but Frölunda, where he obviously started his career, but also played during the lockout season. And when he played in the lockout season, they won the Lamont Trophy, the SHL championship. The tear that he went on in that playoffs at the time was record-breaking in terms of the number of goals and number of points that he got. And so, again, looking at the Hockey Hall of Fame, those international achievements were so many. And then we looked at the third component, which has been probably one of the most heartwarming parts of this campaign, is hearing so many people speak up in support. And that's obviously Daniel's trailblazing advocacy work in mental health. And, you know, obviously the fans and people of Ottawa have recognized it, but he's been recognized at a national level by the Governor General. He was given an honorary doctorate in law from Carleton. His accomplishments and achievements and awards, and even the awards he won at the NHL level of Mark Messier and King Clancy, are all really about leadership and humanitarian work. And so I think when you sort of take the look at his NHL career, his Swedish professional career, his time in the SHL, and then finally at all of his advocacy work, we sort of said, you know what, when you look at all these things together, and those, you know, it's like character and sportsmanship are two of the main tenets that players are judged on to get into the Hall of Fame. And when we sort of looked at that sum total of all those parts, it just became immediately evident to us that we needed to get the word out and share it as broadly as possible.
Now, you mentioned that people reached out to you. Who notably have reached out to you? You know, I saw people like Chris Phillips, of course, Chris Neal, you know, Jason Spezza. You guys have been really making it known on the official Alfie to the Hall Twitter account about who's like speaking in support of Alfie. But I feel there's definitely people behind the scenes that have hit you guys up. Am I wrong? Or
let's take this one.
Throw it around.
Do you want to talk, Craig?
I'll do it. I haven't said anything yet. Yeah, it's been great. The amount of people that have reached out, and in some cases, like, and we've talked about this a little bit kind of internally, is a lot of these guys that played with Alfie, they're not on Twitter, right? So what we've done is we've kind of scoured and found quotes from them in the past that have maybe said nice things about Alfie or reached out and asked for new ones to just kind of secure a bunch. So like the Erik Karlsson one, for example, like he's a guy that's happy to do that kind of stuff, right? He's on Twitter for sure, but he's not the most active guy. He probably wouldn't see our campaign. But when you say, hey, this is to help Alfie get in the Hall of Fame, like
more inclined.
Guys bend over backwards for that stuff, right? They're happy to help. So it's been really cool to kind of see. And I mean, I think the biggest one so far has been the team itself, right? Like that was something that when these guys started this, I mean, that was the reason they had to do it is because the team wasn't willing to, right? So to be able to now, like after they've put in all the hard work kind of on the submission, and we had a lot of the stuff prepped for the team to kind of step up and say like, okay, like you guys did the work, like we're going to help you try and punch you over the goal line here, support it however you need. And that's something that I've always felt too, has kind of been maybe the biggest reason why he isn't in the Hall of Fame.
I think so.
The lack of support from the team. So we really wanted to, like, when that opportunity came up, we really wanted to make sure that we got that out there, that, okay, that's not the case anymore, right? The team's behind this, they're supporting it. And if successful, they're ready to celebrate it, right? And I think that was kind of always the last step that wasn't in place there. Like if he got in, what do you do, right? If the team's not on board. So to be able to get that one, that was really the thing that turned this campaign kind of the next level. So just the support across the board from former players and staff, and now the team, like, I don't think we could have planned that any better. And I jokingly mentioned this to you before, Brendan, was like, when everything goes right, it's pretty easy to hit some really good numbers. Yeah. And we posted some today, and our numbers are really, really impressive. And it's twofold, right? It's the support we got from the people that are willing to help, and the support we got from Sens fans and Alfie fans that have been wanting this for a long time. So when you have all those things pushing in the right direction, it's incredible to see kind of what you can get done. So, I mean, we're just trying to ride that for another week here, and hopefully we can get this guy into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, especially like you just said there, leaving it off, the committee's meeting in less than a week to decide the next batch of candidates. So, I mean, the time is nigh, kind of funny to say, but the time is nigh to figure out whether or not Alfie will be a Hall of Famer in the upcoming batch. It's kind of funny. You took the question out of my mouth. The next question I was going to ask was about the Sens working with you guys. I've mentioned it in my Let's Talk video about Alfredsson, whether or not he's going to be a Hall of Famer. Obviously, he should be. Well, will he be? Now it looks like he will be because the team is behind him. But less than a year ago, like you said, Craig, the team was not behind it, never publicly supporting it. That's why guys like in Toronto or Chicago or any of these big markets, it's much easier for them to get in. Definitely talented, and they deserve to get in, but it's easier for them to get in because they have a big franchise, or a franchise in general, backing them up. Now that the Sens are doing that publicly with Daniel Alfredsson, it's great. We saw, President of Business Operations, Anthony LeBlanc, tweet the other day promoting it, trying to push for the movement. So do you guys have anything planned with the Sens organization in the next week or so? Like, how have you guys been working with the Sens behind the scenes to really push this movement through?
They've basically what they've told us, and it's been really nice, actually. Yeah. And again, this is Corey and Steven's kind of hard work throughout. Like, we were right place, right time, right? Like, we had already, it's not like if the Sens wanted to do a bid for Alfie, they could do it today. Like, the submission date was March, I think. Like, we had, these guys had already done all the work.
They took care of it, yeah.
So on their end, I think I know they were a little concerned. They didn't want to kind of take over the movement, right? Because this, I mean, at its core, this is a fan-driven movement, which is why I think it's been really successful. Is you have two passionate guys that kind of started it from the ground up, and now it's being supported by a bunch of people that want the same thing. So they were a little hesitant. They didn't want to take it over. Like, that was something they were worried about. And so they've just been, the support they've offered has been kind of like, hey, like, keep doing what you're doing, and when we can, we're gonna amplify you guys. And really, that's more than what we can ask for. So they've been really great throughout, and the communication has just been like, hey, like, when you guys can help, feel free, and if there's anything you guys need from us, like, let us know. And but honestly, everything's been just going so well. Like, we haven't had to go back and push for extra things. It's been really nice. It's been great to kind of just engage with the team again on that front, and especially on something this important.
That's I'm gonna throw a question out to Corey and Steven, because I think that's a good segue. Like you said, this wasn't the team. This was Corey and Steven taking over and putting through a formal public submission. So what's the process in doing that? And what did you add in that submission to the Hockey Hall of Fame, to the committee, to help get Alfie to the Hall?
Yeah, so I'd say it's another great question. And I think part of it was an education for ourselves. And what we learned is that the Hockey Hall of Fame has all of their bylaws published directly on their site. And so sort of on one of those COVID nights when we were squirreled away at home, I went through and read the Constitution. And one of the parts that sort of jumped out was that there is an avenue for a public submission to be presented to the selection committee. Now, I would say, in general, the selection committee process is a secretive one. And so in terms of what we'd hear back was, we got a confirmed acknowledgement that it had been received and that it had been handed over to the selection committee members. But that was really the extent of our conversation. The team at the Hockey Hall of Fame were very helpful in terms of, how do we get the submission into your hands? What's the, who do we contact the right people? So all the people that we dealt with at the Hall of Fame were very helpful under the constraints of the confidentiality that they have. And then, so to the second part of it, we did end up submitting, it was probably about 12 to 15 pages. Wow. That went in total. And a lot of that information are the pieces that we're promoting over last week and this week with the infographics in terms of some of the data that sort of jumped out that I was like, like one of the big ones was if you look at the 2000s, it's like Alfie's third in points and he's one behind Iginla. And, they always say it's like, it's not about a short period. It's about having a sustained successful career. And I think if you can look at someone over the course of a decade and say, oh my gosh, like he was right at the top of the pile. Those were sort of the parts of information that we felt were the most compelling and what we're trying to share as well. I would also say that the deck probably was as big as 100 pages before it shrunk down back to 12. So there was a lot of information and deciding what's the most relevant. And I think sort of between the three of us, we got a really nice balance of that.
Well, go ahead, Stephen. Sorry.
I was just thinking it's also what was relevant is how does he stack up against people who are already in the hall? Like what makes somebody hall worthy? Well, people who are already there tell us what the standard is. And I think the numbers, like there's a lot of statistics in there, but it's really how does he stack up against not only who is he going up against this year, but also how does that stack up against who's already there? And so it tells the statistical story that we're trying to tell is in like sort of that framing.
Well, I'm looking at some of the graphics you guys are referring to right now. Like, look at this. All-time ranks, Daniel Alfredsson, points, 55th all-time NHL with a crazy amount of points. I'm just going to pull it up. 1,157 points, 65th in goals. Great number, by the way, if you're a Sens fan. 444 goals, assists, 53rd in the National Hockey League, 713. Like, it's absolutely insane. But then this is what I love about what you guys are doing. You adjust it to the current era of all time. And now it's 35th in points, 49th in goals, 41st in assists. And you see the number skyrocket when you adjust it to this era. And, we see people do this all the time with guys like Alexander Ovechkin or, like a Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid, comparing them to when Wayne Gretzky was in the National Hockey League. So why not do it with Daniel Alfredsson? I think it's a very fair point to make. And then most importantly, let's take a look at the all-time records that Daniel Alfredsson has with the Ottawa Senators. Most points, 1,108. Most goals, 426. Most assists, 682. Game-winning goals, 69. Don't want to get very nice. Exactly, Craig. Power play goals, 131. Automatic on the power play. Shorthanded goals, 25. Shots, 3,320. I mean, that's the definition of a dominant player. You're leading in the most important stats. Game-winning goals, points, shots, shorthanded goals, power play goals. I mean, he leads in every statistical category. And the Ottawa Senators have been around long enough for that to be notable enough for a Hall of Fame cause, let alone the fact, like you said, comparing and contrasting to other Hall of Fame players, like internationally too, being just below Matt Sundin for all-time points. So my final question for you guys, I kind of just threw a lot of stats in your faces. I had to do it, though. We had to discuss the stats real quickly because, Alfredsson's career is very, very impressive. So I kind of want to put his career into like one main push from each of you for why he should be a Hall of Famer. So I'll start with you, Craig. What's your main reason as to why you think Daniel Alfredsson should be a Hockey Hall of Famer?
What's funny is like these guys have done such a good job of like telling all the reasons why. One of the things that I really like is kind of dispelling the reasons why he shouldn't, right? Like the number one thing we talked about earlier is maybe the team's participation. Okay, well, I think we've dispelled that one, so that's good. I think the next is no cup. Oh, he's got no cup, so no Hall of Fame. And it's like some of the stats these guys put together are pretty interesting, right? So since 2000, 28% of the Hall of Fame inductees haven't won a Stanley Cup. So it's not like they're keeping everybody. Yeah. Right? It's not like that's the key to get in. Sure, it makes it a little bit trickier. But again, look at all those numbers and stats you just rattled off. Like those are comparable to guys that have got in. Like I think Jerome McGinley is arguably one of his biggest comparables. And they're on par with a lot of things, especially when you look at their prime decade, like they're neck and neck. So on my end, it's that Stanley Cup one. Like that was the one that kind of jumped out to me because that's the one you'll get from Leaf fans, right? No cup. Well, Matt Sundin
haven't had a cup since '67, anyways.
Yeah, so Matt Sundin didn't win a Stanley Cup, right? He went in. So there's room for guys. There's room for guys in the hall like that, like that. Matt Sundin, Jerome McGinley, Daniel Alfredsson, even the Sedins, right? Like I think those guys are going to go in eventually, maybe after 11, but so it turns down to like looking at what Corey and Steven have kind of put together, which is like compared to guys who are already in, compared to guys who are maybe eligible, and even down the line. I like dispelling that Stanley Cup one. That's the number one. I want people to hear that one so that we can kind of move past it, right? And we can just keep rattling off all these things he leads in.
What about you, Corey?
Yeah, I think Craig did a nice job of summarizing it there. The only sort of other perspective I would offer is one being someone who grew up in Ottawa and isn't there right now. And as sort of, sometimes taking a step back grants you a different perspective. And I don't think I appreciated while I was there just how lucky a city like Ottawa is to have someone like Daniel Alfredsson. Like if there was ever anyone you wanted to put as your figurehead in terms of someone who you'd want to base off as a role model, I'd be hard pressed to find anyone else in the city who would meet that threshold. And I think that the biggest proof of it has just been how overwhelming the response has been. And everybody wants to help. Everyone is just, yes, what can I do? And I think when you get so much positive momentum like that, it's clearly a sign that it's touched with people. And yeah, I'm excited to see what happens next. And regardless of what happens, we're not going away. And it's just been really, really nice to see the city celebrate someone who's done so much for it.
And you, Stephen?
Touching on what Corey was saying, I think he made us. I think we forget how bad the Sens were in back in the 90s when we started out, and they were building through the draft, and how much of a painful process that was, and that he was the personification of the franchise becoming a real a cup contender, becoming a staple in the community. And if you can personify that on one person, it is on Daniel Alfredsson, and giving the team and giving the city a sense of pride in being able to cheer for them. To me, that's what makes him such an icon for the city. But I think it also gets him, points him in the direction of the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and I think all three of you guys raised some really good points there. And I'm glad, Stephen, you touched up on like the things he's done in the community. I think that's not spoken about enough. I was young, obviously, when Alfredsson was in his prime, and I'm not the oldest guy, but I mean, I still remember, his community work, even up until his last years in 2012, 2013. I mean, and even coming back since retirement. I mean, it's just his love for the city is real. And before this interview, I watched his, retirement ceremony, obviously when they raised his number to the banner. And I mean, his speech, just the way I think 5 or 6 times during the ceremony, maybe more, the crowd broke out into Alfie chants for 5+ minutes. I mean, you don't see that in Ottawa so much. I won't lie with you. I mean, maybe for Zub once or twice a year, but for Alfredsson, 5 or 6 in like 15, 20 minutes. Unreal. So, I think you guys have done a great job with this movement. And I think you guys had great answers there. I did want to throw a couple more questions at you. I did miss a couple really, really important questions. You mentioned to me that a lot of people in the community, have been reaching out to you and have been loving what you guys have been doing. But has Daniel Alfredsson either have heard about the movement and or has he been in contact with you guys?
We've been told that he heard, he was made aware of it.
Okay.
Hasn't been in contact, certainly not with me. I don't know about you guys, but we were told that he was made aware and that he was very flattered and humbled that, a couple of fans, a couple of strangers would take this up. But that was, we were told that, that he knew, but that he was very flattered.
Well, hopefully if he gets in this year, he'll make sure to give you guys a handshake. Because I mean, like you said, 2 years now of working on this, we're coming into the final week. So let's hope this final push really helps. Craig, Corey, Steven, it's an absolute pleasure to have you guys on. Thank you for all the work you've been doing behind the scenes. I look forward to seeing what continues for the next week, and hopefully we get Alfie to the Hall.
Hell yeah.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, man.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.